You have been seeing me talking about some daring ideas. I'm Cavalher. That's who I am. I can make you see for yourself that the unconscious mind is material and causes concrete situations in your life and in your company. I can make you see for yourself the information that comes from your unconscious mind, free from your ego's interference or mine. I can make you see for yourself that the mechanisms of your consciousness and your unconscious mind are not subjective, imprecise, or mysterious things. The mechanisms of your consciousness or your unconscious mind, the mechanisms of the collective consciousness and the unconscious mind of your company can be described with precision through psychological algorithms. However, there is one single exception, one only thing that is not precise: transcendence. Until the end of this video, you will understand how the transcendence acts concretely in your life, causing a consciousness leap and opening new pathways. Pathways that were, up to now, unimaginable. In previous videos, I have destroyed illusions that prevent you from understanding how the transcendence acts concretely on your life. I strongly suggest that you watch them. I have destroyed the illusion that the unconscious mind is a subjective, abstract, and invisible thing. The unconscious mind is a material thing and causes concrete things in your life many times a day. I have destroyed the illusion that the unconscious mind is an imprecise thing. It is not. The unconscious mind is extremely precise. As a matter of fact, it is of an irritating precision. The structure and dynamics of the consciousness and the unconscious mind can be described through exact psychological algorithms. For instance, this is the simplified psychological algorithm of a company that hired the services of the School of Sense, of which I am co-founder. You can study in detail how psychological algorithms work in companies by clicking on the suggested video. This is the simplified psychological algorithm of a person. In fact, that is my algorithm. Years ago, I was experiencing this psychological structure and going through this transformation. You can study in detail how psychological algorithms work in people by clicking on the suggested video. You can see the unconscious mind with your own eyes in a concrete and precise way. There is one exception only. There is one only thing in the unconscious mind that is not exact: the transcendence. Have you already noted that although most of us declare to love novelties, our lives are quite ordinary? We go to work the same way every day, we want to eat the same food, we always feel attracted by or reject certain types of people, and the same situations keep happening in our lives. Have you already noted that although companies declare to be interested in creativity and innovation, they usually end up choosing routines, best practices, and standardized procedures and products? Even when we clearly don't like our routine, even when we complain about it on a daily basis, we just keep going. Even when we become rebellious, decide to change, and make a huge effort, at some point, we get tired of struggling and everything goes back to normal. The change is only a temporary one. Even when we undergo treatments and when companies hire consultants, the new techniques are very often forgotten and everything goes back to normal. The change is only a temporary one. Why is this maddening repetition going on? It's very likely that you would choose a life different from the one you live today if you could. In our imagination, we can clearly see how we should change our lives. It seems very easy. But if you try to make it happen, it suddenly becomes extremely difficult. How do I make it happen? Where do I start? Consciously, you want to change your life. Consciously, you clearly imagine the life you want to have. But your life is not determined by your consciousness. Without you noting, the unconscious mind determines your life thoroughly. We think that we are in full control of our lives. That is a very sophisticated illusion. While we are deluded, the unconscious mind acts. The source codes that determine your thoughts, emotions, behaviors, relationships, and life situations in a concrete way are in your unconscious mind. The source codes that determine your professional performance, your company's operation, and the results your company can achieve in a concrete way are in your unconscious mind. Each of these codes are psychological algorithms. For example, in this company, the section of the algorithm determines that the company's president is constantly confused and paralyzed. It also determines that the directors cannot compromise. Obviously, the president would like to change this situation. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was paralyzed. The directors wouldn't stop disagreeing and revenue would not stop decreasing. For instance, in my own story, this section of the algorithm determined that since I felt rejected and had the need of being accepted, I dedicated myself to a never-ending improvement process and to becoming more and more specialized in the work of great authors. Since my early childhood, I used to dream about making my own innovative creation, my masterpiece. My psychological algorithm would not let me, though. Every time I tried to develop my own work, I ended up reading the works of the great masters. No matter how hard people consciously want to change their lives, no matter how hard people strive to change, the psychological algorithm continues to unconsciously determine the repetition of life situations. You and your company are kept prisoners of an overwhelming routine. Note that the psychological algorithms are not at all imprecise. Much to the contrary, they work like clockwork. Note that the psychological algorithms are fixed formulas that determine with precision the repetition of life situations. They are so precise and so exact that you can't get rid of the situations they determine. Your life becomes a set of gifts. Is that it? Are you doomed to be eternally stuck in your routine? No, there is one exception. There is one thing in your unconscious mind that is not exact, the transcendence. But how does transcendence manifest itself in a concrete way? As a mind hacker, I start by investigating. My first goal is to uncover the psychological algorithm's structure. This way, we get to structures such as this one, or this one. This way, we reach a diagnosis. We access the code of the psychological algorithm that unconsciously imprisons you and your company in vicious circles. There is nothing of imprecise, of invisible, of mystical here. You will be able to see with your own eyes, clearly and precisely, the operation of the psychological algorithm on a concrete level. On the next stage of the mind hacking process, I propose an alteration in the source code of your psychological algorithm. Together, you and I analyze the algorithm to uncover the exact point of the code that has been determining a loop, an imprisoning vicious circle. We are going to intervene on this exact point. We are going to eliminate this point of the code. By eliminating the initial part of the code that is causing the vicious circle, the whole code becomes dead and the repetition stops. It is as if the first 10 kilometers of a road had been dynamited and entirely destroyed. You can't access the road because the first 10 kilometers no longer exist. The whole road is now inaccessible. I will insist. There is nothing of imprecise, of invisible, of mystical in this intervention. I'm talking about a clearly comprehensible, exact, and concrete intervention. We do that as follows. Together, you and I define concrete actions that eliminate this initial part of the code. For instance, in the company that hired the School of Sense, the point of the source code that created the repetition, the vicious circle, was a prohibition of anger. That prohibition had been installed by consultants that were hired before us. Those consultants had installed a virus in the company's system. The current moral system of our society classifies anger as a negative emotion, one that must be repressed. However, dark emotions are as positive as the light ones. Aggressiveness, for example, stimulates us to remove the obstacles that prevent us from accomplishing the things we want. Forbidden to feel anger, the company's president became paralyzed and was incapable of interfering in the director's disagreement. As a matter of fact, the director's disagreement was not even evident. After all, anger was forbidden. In front of other people, they would be very flattering. Behind people's backs, the repressed anger forced them to never agree. Together, we defined a concrete action that would eliminate the repetitive code of the algorithm. Anger was no longer forbidden. From that point on, anger was allowed as well as expressing it. The rest of the code was dead. In the presence of anger, the president was no longer paralyzed and intervened in the director's disagreement. Now let's look at my own psychological algorithm as an example of how all that works for a person. The point of the source code that was creating the repetition, the vicious circle in my life, was the pain of feeling rejected by being different. I used to compensate that by trying to stand out through my knowledge. I dedicated myself to become more and more specialized in the ideas of the great thinkers instead of developing my own ideas. The more rejection I felt, the more enlightened I became. Obviously, as it happens in any vicious circle, I got nowhere. I defined a concrete action I needed to take in order to eliminate the repetitive code of the algorithm. When I felt rejected for being different, I would no longer react, diving into studies or demonstrating my knowledge. I would simply admit that I am indeed different and stand the pain. The rest of the code was dead. When I understood that being rejected is a part of life, I didn't need to be accepted anymore. Then what? What happens after that point? The one thing that is not exact in the unconscious mind manifests itself: transcendence. When we develop an exact consciousness of the vicious circle that took control of our lives, when we take the exact action that stops the continuity of the vicious circle, transcendence manifests itself. The transcendence rewrites the source code of the psychological algorithm. The transcendence creates a new algorithm. In the company that hired the School of Sense, the transcendence rewrote the algorithm, including anger. That had concrete and immediate consequences. The new code included the emotional intelligence of dealing with anger. Free from feeling anger and capable of expressing it in an intelligent and human way, the president chose an authoritarian style of leadership, one that is adequate for chaotic situations. He interfered in the director's disguised disagreement and did what they were unwilling to do. He corrected the company's product. The consequence, the concrete consequence, the material consequence was a revenue increase. The Transcendence's action is concrete, material. In my life, Transcendence rewrote the code, revealing the reason why people rejected me. My ideas were too different of those people agree on, of those people take for granted, of those people keep repeating. Imagine how shocked I was when I realized that the current way of referring to different ideas is creative ideas, innovative ideas. What people rejected in me, what I myself rejected in me, was exactly what the market currently values the most: creativity and innovation. No longer fearing rejection, no longer needing to show off the knowledge I had about the ideas of other people, I admitted to myself that I had a strongly innovative idea. The new code included the courage to show my own creation to people. I took action and realized one of my innovative ideas. The paradigm of sense was created. The Transcendence's action is concrete, material. Through its actions, the Transcendence increased the company's revenue. That's a very concrete thing, a mathematical and evident thing. In my life, the Transcendence triggered the creation of a new psychological paradigm. Besides its intrinsic value, the paradigm of sense became the structure of my work and originated a series of innovative products, like mind hacking itself, that are now offered by an innovative enterprise, the School of Sense. Therefore, my dearest, enough of saying that the Transcendence is too subjective, too abstract, too difficult to comprehend. The Transcendence acts directly on a concrete level. But saying that the Transcendence is not exact means exactly what? Transcendence is not exact because when it rewrites the source code of our psychological algorithms, it includes things that are totally unpredictable for us. Transcendence triggers leaps of consciousness. For instance, at the company of our example, Transcendence inserted in the code something that was unthinkable for those professionals. That anger is a legitimate thing and there are humanized ways of positively expressing it. In my life, Transcendence inserted in the code something that was unthinkable for me at the time. That my weird ideas were in fact innovative ideas. We can't precisely predict how Transcendence will rewrite the source code of the psychological algorithm. However, as soon as the new source code is installed by Transcendence, it works like any other psychological algorithm. It has exact and concrete consequences. The impossibility of predicting how Transcendence is going to rewrite the source code is exactly the state-of-the-art of mind hacking. The presence of the Transcendence makes the process free of the negative interference of your ego or mine. Without the presence of the Transcendence and without observing the unconscious mind, most of the techniques currently offered propose solutions based on what consultants believe to be right, the best, the panacea. When the solution is based on the consultant's beliefs, it is based on the consultant's ego. The ego's perspective is too narrow because it is restricted to what is already known. If you limit yourself to what you already know, you will be stuck to the life you live today, and your company will be stuck to the obsolete techniques, procedures, and products. Or worse. The ego's perspective makes you and your company buy the consultant's beliefs instead of finding your own individuality and your own pathway. As a mind hacker, I do not take my beliefs to you. Therefore, I don't work with standardized methods. The amplitude of my actions as a mind hacker is to define clearly and precisely the psychological algorithm that is causing vicious circles, as well as the exact point of the algorithm over which you should interfere. It is to create the ideal conditions for the direct manifestation of the transcendence in your life and in your company. But I also know when to stop. New things and innovation will never be born out of what you know today, of what you already know. That's obvious. Either you stay or you go. A life that is indeed new is necessarily unpredictable, necessarily unthinkable for you and for me. True innovation is necessarily unpredictable, necessarily unthinkable for you and for me. A life that is indeed new and true innovation are beyond what you and I can see today. A life that is indeed new and true innovation transcend what you and I can see today. A life that is indeed new and true innovation are transcendental.